Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 16 articles in this episode for you, and all the URLs are in the description of the video. This is the version or episode in the Capitol. Hopefully the audio is going out fine on these. I haven't gotten any complaints in the last couple of days, so apparently renaming it is getting it past the censorship. Shame that we have to resort to that, but hey, things. For Western journalism, it says Conway mocked for claiming microwaves can be used as cameras. I thought this was rather humorous, and it's not real big news, but just shows you where people's heads are at, I guess. The White House counselor Kellyanne Conway, who in the span of the Trump administration has become one of Twitter's favorite targets, receiving end again this week after suggesting microwaves could be used to spy on Americans. An interview that appeared Sunday in New Jersey's Bergen County Record surveillance methods. The topic was timely due to President Donald Trump's claims that he was wiretapped as a candidate, newest WikiLeaks disclosures that the CIA could hack smart TVs to eavesdrop on their owners. There are many ways to surveil each other. Conway says you can surveil someone through their phone, certainly through their television sets, any number of ways. Monitoring could be done with microwaves that turn into cameras, adding, "We know that this is a fact of modern life." And there the tweet started. And this first one says, "Do you know if Trump Tower was wiretapped?" is the question. And Callahan says, "There was an article this week. You can be spied on by a camera in your microwave." A picture that he puts up. He says, "Oh my God, Pete Souza's Instagram." And he has a picture of a microwave with Obama microwave. His head's popped up with a camera like he's taking a picture. So as a former president, Barack Obama's White House photographer decided to have fun with the remarks. Souza went on Instagram and shared a photo of Obama's head with a camera in a microwave. "Photoshopping one of my photos. For the record, it wasn't me," he wrote. So you can't make this stuff up. Souza was not the only one to indulge. Let's see, and Eric Brandstein says, "Don't let Kellyanne Conway's remarks scare you. You can disable the CIA's wiretappings by using your microwave on the beverage setting." And another one says, "Tinfoil hat future skyrocket on the news that Trump with microwave ovens." Oh my goodness gracious. And then there's another picture that's got Obama taking a picture and Michelle with headphones on, and Hillary holding a pair of binoculars all inside of a microwave. It says, "Maybe Kellyanne Conway thinks all these people are spying on Trump inside the microwave." Set the record straight. And she says, "All I said to Bergen Record is I was making a comment about the articles from this past week where it is revealed that one can be surveilled in any number of techniques, through microwaves, through cameras, through televisions. I wasn't talking about anything specifically," she said on ABC's Good Morning America. "I wasn't questioning about Trump Tower. Those are two separate things." She repeated that comment on CNN's New Day. "I'm not Inspector Gadget," she said. "I don't believe people are using the microwave to spy on the Trump campaign." Oh my goodness gracious. I have to wonder if she's ever even used a microwave. The next one we have Liberty Writers, and it says, "Cover up. Obama spent $36 million last year to hide something huge from the American people." And we'll get it to scroll up here a little bit. We get the hamster to cooperate. Says it's time to expose Barack Obama for the traitor to the American people he really is. After all, only a man with something horrible to hide would spend $36 billion in 1 year just to keep his own records secret. And his cover-up didn't stop there. In 2015 and 2016, Obama set a record for the number of times federal employees said they couldn't find a single page of files that were Freedom of Information Act. Enough. He also set records the outright denial of access to files, refusing to quickly consider requests described as especially newsworthy, and forcing people to pay for records as extortion. And Obama's massive cover-up didn't just happen the last 2 years. According to a 2013 report from the Committee to Project Journalists and transparency advocates say the White House curbed routine disclosure of information in media to evade scrutiny by the journalists. So basically, Barack Obama was a monster with no respect for the American people or even the journalists who loved him so much. This is why he had no scandals. The real question now is, what was so important that Obama would go that far? Drone strikes on Americans? Surveillance of political opponents? Theft? A fake birth certificate? He may be gone to know the truth. Is off Liberty Writers. Shot what Julian Assange just leaked about Hillary Clinton will be the end of her. We've heard that before. A little boy that cried wolf. But let's see what this says. It's an amazing track record. The mainstream media tried to call into question what they released, but it never worked. The media even tried to attack yours truly, but that is a story for a different time. WikiLeaks just exposed their biggest CIA dump last week, called Vault 7, and exposed the CIA's global. Julian Assange sent out a tweet that says, Clinton stated privately this month that she is quietly pushing for a Pence takeover. She stated that Pence is predictable, hence defeatable. Story. The tweet before Twitter decides to delete it. Regia says, if this is true, this is not good. Julian Assange has a great track record of telling the truth. If Hillary Clinton is pushing for Mike Pence to take over, if this is her plan, then it is a horrible plan. Mike Pence won't do her bidding. It's time to actually clean the swamp. It's time to get rid of the biggest swamp creature of them all, Hillary Clinton. This woman is a wart on the toe of the American government. She doesn't have the influence that she used to peddle, but she is now so much more dangerous. Let her turn Mike Pence and Donald Trump against each other. We have to make this country great again. We are currently waiting for confirmation about Julian's tweet, and we would like to see Hillary's specific words about Mike Pence. So there's that article. I don't think that's going to ruin her. It's going to take much more than that. Indictment. The next one we have is off of Breitbart.com. For the hamster, here he comes. McCain Rand is working for Vladimir Putin, it says. It says Senator Rand Paul responded to McCain's comments after publication of this piece, and that's below the article. So let's read it and see what it has to say. During a speech on the Senate floor on Wednesday, Senator John McCain, Republican of Arizona, stated that Senator Republican of Kentucky is achieving the objectives of and working for Vladimir Putin. Paul objected to a unanimous consent motion to advance a bill to advance bid to join NATO. There it goes. McCain said, if there is objection, you are achieving the objectives of Vladimir Putin. You're achieving the objectives of trying to dismember this small country that has already been the subject of an attempted coup. No idea why anyone would object to this, except that I will say, if they object, they are now carrying out the desires of, now carrying out the desires and ambitions of Vladimir Putin. And McCain then asked for unanimous consent to advance the bill, which Paul objected to. McCain then stated, I note the senator from Kentucky leaving the floor without justification, or rather, rationale action that he has just taken. That a senator blocking a treaty by the overwhelming number, perhaps 98 at least, of his colleagues would come to the floor and object and walk away. And you can draw when he walks away to be made. He has no justification for his objection to having small NATO that is under assault from the Russians. So I repeat again, the senator from Kentucky is now working for Vladimir Putin. Says on Thursday, Paul's office reached out to Breitbart asking to include the Kentucky Republicans' reaction to McCain, which says, currently the United States has troops in dozens of countries and is actively fighting in Iraq, Syria, Libya, and Yemen. Drone strike in Pakistan. The United States is pledged to defend 28 countries in NATO. It is unwise to expand the monetary and military obligations of the United States given the burden of our $20 trillion debt. Well spoken. What we have is off of BizPack Review. And what is it with these people? Everything is, you know, you don't agree with them, all of a sudden you're a Russian operative. What the hell? This one says, President Trump visits Michigan to discuss auto industry, future of manufacturing. Trump will visit automotive industry leaders in Detroit Wednesday and announce a formal review of vehicle fuel efficiency rules the Obama administration implemented. Trump will meet with CEOs of General Motors, Ford, and Fiat Chrysler during his visit to the American Center for Mobility in Ypsilanti, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. The president will also meet with officials representing Japanese and German automakers as well. The president tweeted his anticipation, promising to bring back car production to the Great Lakes state. And the Trump tweet says, we'll be going to Detroit, Michigan, love, today for a big meeting on bringing back car production to state happening. The article continues. It says the Trump administration has decided to review the feasibility of the new vehicle emissions rules, which automakers say would be too expensive and could cost jobs. Trump will visit an autonomous vehicle testing site, hold a round table with auto executives, and then speak to auto workers and others at the Detroit facility. The new administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, Scott Pruitt, and the new secretary of the Department of Transportation, Elaine Chao, president on his visit. Pruitt puts out a tweet that says, Secretary Chao and I are ready to travel with President Trump to Michigan today to deliver news to American workers and consumers. It goes on to say the vehicle's testing site at Willow Run is still yet to be completed, with plans to include a 2.5-mile test track test area. The manufacturing complex outside Detroit was constructed during World War II for mass production of wartime aircraft. The Willow Run facility, famously, new aircraft bomber every hour, scheduled to appear on the Fox News program Tucker Carlson tonight at 9 p.m., and that was on Wednesday. Already happened. Next one that we have is off of Western Journalism. Justice Department wants more time to find anything to support Trump's wiretap claim. On Monday, asked the House Intelligence Committee for more time if any responsive documents may exist to support President Donald Trump's claim of pre-election surveillance, investigating possible links between Trump's campaign and Russia, had set a Monday deadline for the White House to provide any evidence to back, which was disputed by the Obama administration. No information had been transmitted by Monday evening. Instead, sought an additional time to review the request in compliance with the governing legal authorities. On March the 4th, Trump issued a series of tweets accusing former President Barack Obama of wiretapping him. Those tweets here, I think we've been over those enough that I don't need to read them again. It says, if President's tweets, he said very clearly, quote, wiretapping, in quotes, Spicer said. There's been substantial discussion in several reports. There's been reports in the New York Times and the BBC and other outlets aspects of surveillance that have occurred. The president was very clear in his tweet that it was, wiretapping. That spans a whole host of surveillance types options. I think there's no question that the Obama administration, that there were actions and other activities that occurred in the 2016 election, Spicer said. The president used the word wiretaps in quotes to mean surveillance and other activities, Spicer said. The Trump's tweets about surveillance should be read to encompass the Obama administration, not the president personally. Spicer's comments echo those of House Intelligence Committee Chairman Representative Devin Nunes, Republican of California. The president is a neophyte to politics, Nunes said last week. Over a year, I think a lot of the things you guys sometimes take literally. Conservative Tribune. And it says, report, FBI to reveal truth about Trump's wiretapping claims to senators in classified meeting. The past 2 weeks, headlines have been largely dominated by President Donald Trump's claims that President Barack Obama wiretapped Trump Tower in order to listen in on what Trump was saying during the campaign transition period. Actual evidence of such wiretapping has been revealed. The FBI sent a letter to South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham responding to his request, the UK Daily Mail reported. Graham said Wednesday that the FBI Director James Comey agreed to brief Graham and Rhode Island Democrat Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, but only in a classified setting, meaning that the public won't be able to know what is said during the meeting. Chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee's Subcommittee on Crime and Terrorism is its ranking Democrat. The 8th, the two sent a letter to Comey demanding answers to the wiretap controversy. Apparently, the FBI has contacted my staff and said that they some date in the future providing us an answer to the classified. Graham said in a Wednesday's interference in the 2016 U.S. election, according to the Daily Mail. Tapping, or at least no proof of wiretapping. Why does the FBI need a classified briefing? Well, somewhat fishy here. Hamster's out of control. I think he fell off the wheel. We'll get some answers within the next week. That article. The next article that I have is off of Western Journalism. It says, Watchdog Group sues to get facts about between Lynch and Clinton. And there is video. Meeting. A watchdog group is taking the Department of Justice to court for details about the clandestine June 2016 airport meeting between former Attorney General Loretta Lynch and former President Bill Clinton. Judicial Watch Freedom of Information Act request last June seeking documents related to the visit, June the 28th of 2016, aboard Lynch's private plane airport. The meeting took place only days before the FBI interviewed Hillary Clinton as part of the investigation use of a private email server while she was Secretary of State. After news of the meeting leaked to the public, Lynch was forced to publicly announce that she was distancing herself from the Clinton investigation, although she never formally recused herself. Clinton each maintained they never discussed the Clinton investigation during their conversation. The Justice Department did not respond to a Freedom of Information Act request within the allotted period, Judicial Watch said, prompting the group to sue. The infamous tarmac meeting between President Clinton and Attorney General Lynch is a vivid example of why many Americans believe the Obama administration's criminal investigation into Hillary Clinton was rigged. President of Judicial Watch. Now it will be up to Attorney General Sessions at the Trump Justice Department to finally shed some light on this subversion of justice, he added. Information Act request filed by Judicial Watch seeks all records and transcripts of the meeting between Lynch and Bill Clinton, to or from officials in the Office of Attorney General and Office of the Deputy Attorney General about the meeting, and any references to the meeting in any schedule-related documents maintained by the Office of General. Judicial Watch last year also requested that the Justice Department's Office of the Inspector General investigate the meeting. Lynch's meeting with President Clinton creates the appearance of a violation of law, ethical standards, and good judgment, Judicial Watch said in its request. Lynch's decision to breach the well-defined ethical standards of the Department of Justice and the American legal profession is an outrageous abuse of trust. Her conduct and statements undermine confidence in her ability to objectively investigate and prosecute possible violations of law associated with President Clinton and Secretary Clinton, the letter added. This incident undermines the public's faith in the fair administration of justice. Simply stated, Lynch's meeting with former President Clinton creates the broad public impression that the fix is in, the watchdog stated. Is off of Conservative Tribune, and it says Trump to meet with Chinese leader next month in Florida. Trump is set to host a consequential meeting with a significant world leader in April, but it won't be in the formal setting of the White House in Washington. Instead, the Daily Caller reported that Trump is scheduled to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping in April for a working session at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida, much like he did with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe shortly after being sworn into office. In-person meeting between Trump and Xi since the inauguration, and the two leaders will have much to talk about since their phone call following the election. Confirmed to CNN that the meeting was scheduled to be held at the Mar-a-Lago, but cautioned that as of right now, the plans were only tentative and subject to change. It is expected that plans for the meeting will be finalized during an upcoming meeting between Secretary of State and Chinese officials in Beijing later this week. The summit between the two leaders, reported by Axios, quick to mention that no golf outings are part of the plan, at least not officially, as there is much to be discussed during the working session, April 6th and 7th, a Thursday and Friday. Does not look kindly on the sport either, according to the Washington Post. The list of topics to be discussed is Chinese cooperation in the future with regard to North Korean antics, followed closely by Chinese military expansion into South China Sea. There will also likely be discussion of trade policy, currency manipulation, and the theft of intellectual property, not to mention human rights issues. The president will likely be seeking assurances of Trump's continued support of the One China policy regarding Taiwan, which is viewed as a breakaway province by China. Along with attempting to head off any punitive trade measures Trump may be considering on imports and exports between the two countries. Should ease concerns among other world leaders, as well as among his critics here at home, is in fact serious and entirely capable of engaging with the establishment powers on the world stage. That said, the venues may not be with the Chinese, though they likely would never admit it. as they could very well being held at the resort instead of the White House as being less honorable and placing them at a disadvantage when it comes to negotiations. And aside, it is thought that holding the summit at the sunny and relaxing Florida resort instead of the formal and stuffy setting of the White House could be more conducive to productive meeting and should help ease growing tensions between the two rival nations. Off of BizPack Review. And it says, New York Times uses tantalizing headline to dump the biggest nothing burger yet on Neil Gorsuch. An ominous headline lurks on the front page of Wednesday's New York Times, tantalizing readers with word of Judge Neil Gorsuch web of ties to a secretive billionaire. That Gorsuch, President Donald Trump's nominee to succeed late Justice Anton Scalia on the Supreme Court, has something of a patron in Philip Anstoch. Well, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Anstoch's net worth is $12.6 billion. He's an investment magnate who leverages his fortune to finance conservative groups, including the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society. Gorsuch's ties to Anstoch prove far less interesting than the headline suggests. The judge was retained to represent Anstoch, an attorney in private practice at Kellogg, Huber, Hanson, Todd, Evans, and Feigl, the elite boutique operation based in Washington, D.C. Capacity, Gorsuch represented several of the billionaires' companies as well as their corporate officers. A review of these cases conducted by the Times shows garden variety litigation. The most appears to be a dispute over a $710 million extraordinary dividend. His partners, Mark Hanson, told the Times Gorsuch was assigned the work because of his skills and experience and because he had expressed to me an interest in getting involved in things related to his home state. Gorsuch is based in Colorado. Another lawyer representing the billionaire, Bruce Black, wrote a letter to George W. Bush administration's White House counsel, Harriet Miers, in January of 2006, asking the White House to consider Gorsuch for a seat on the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. That federal appeals court is based in Denver. Gorsuch secured the appointment and was unanimously confirmed by the state later that year, but it's unclear what role, if any, Black's letter played in the White House's selection process. Aside from these fairly unremarkable revelations, the Times raised the prospect of conflicts of interest should Gorsuch win confirmation to the Supreme Court, as Anstoch's companies sprawl across dozens of industries and states. It is conceivable litigation involving his business interest would one day appear before the High Court. His previous work, they fear, could undercut his impartiality or at least create the appearance of impropriety. The National Law Journal's Tony Mauro recently showed Gorsuch has adhered to ethics rules during his tenure on the 10th Circuit. He has recused himself from over 1,000 cases, often on the basis that they are former client or colleague. The Times itself concedes there is no reason to believe this would change should Gorsuch court. The piece concludes by noting that Gorsuch and two individuals the Times describe as Anstoch's top lieutenants jointly own land in Colorado, which they use as something of a secluded fly fishing getaway. The judge is an avid outdoorsman. He was skiing in the Rockies when he learned of Scalia's death in February 2016. Perhaps the most interesting revelation in the piece is its remarkable concession in the sixth graph. Not clear how well the two know each other. The Times writes of the judge and the billionaire as if to apologize for banality. The next article is off BizPack Review. It says, everyone is misinterpreting Mattis's remarks on climate change. You'd think Secretary of Defense James Mattis was concerned with man-made climate change as the head of Greenpeace based on reporting of leaked written statements he sent to lawmakers in January. Secretary James Mattis says climate change is already destabilizing the world, the UK Independent reported questionnaire obtained by ProPublica. Mattis said climate change is real and threatening global stability. ProPublica has Mattis' unpublished testimony before a Senate panel recognizes a threat other administration reject or minimize. But the media is painting the wrong picture about his comments. The Department of Justice has viewed climate change, whether man-made or natural, as a national security concern for a decade. His boilerplate remarks reflect the high adverse in both the Bush and Obama administration that climate change is one of many scenarios the military may need to adapt to. In his answers to the New Hampshire Senator Jeanne Shaheen, Shaheen says, I understand you were commander of the U.S. Joint Forces Command. You signed off on a document called the Joint Operation Environment, which change as one of the security threats the military will face in the next quarter century. Do you believe climate change is a security threat? Mattis says climate change can be a driver of instability, and the Department of Defense must pay attention to potential adverse impacts generated by this phenomenon. General Mattis, how should the military prepare to address this threat? And Mattis says, as I noted above, it's a challenge that requires a broader whole of government response. I will assure that the Department of Defense plays its appropriate role within such a response by addressing national security aspects. In a reply to another, said, I agree that the effects of a changing climate, such as increased maritime access to the Arctic, rising sea levels, desertification, among others, impact our security situation. I will ensure that the department continues to be prepared to conduct operations today and in the future, prepared to address the effects of a changing climate, assessment, resources, and readiness. Notice how Mattis never said global warming is already destabilizing the world, as the Independent claims. Nor does Mattis argue climate change is a threatening global stability, as Huffington Post would have you believe. Climate change can cause stability and has the potential impacts. That's not exactly a ringing endorsement of the 97% consensus we often hear from liberals. Has considered climate change a national security concern for at least a decade, in part for its potential to open up and resources in Arctic. Democrats turned into a talking point in the 2009 in 2009 to convince Republican senators to support cap and trade legislation. Took issue heights, Obama made fighting global warming a major part of his foreign policy strategy, and even told U.S. Coast Guard Academy graduates it was an immediate risk to our national security. Obama and then Secretary of State John Kerry suggested global warming contributed to the Syrian civil war and rise of Islamic State. It's surprising that reporters hyped up Mattis's remarks. The media drudged up similar reports when President Donald Trump first nominated Mattis to head the Defense Department back in December. Politico asked if Mattis was the Trump cabinet's lone green hope because of his 2006 plea to unleash the military from the tether of fuel by utilizing alternative energy from biofuel, solar panels, and wind turbines. Motivated by concern over global warming? Probably not. Sole reliance on oil as a weakness that exposed the U.S. military to an adverse amount of risk of Washington's enemies and the kind of addiction that hampered military operations in underdeveloped regions, and climate policy just became the vehicle through which to fund such energy diversification during the Obama administration. Military operations depend on fuel, and most of it comes from petroleum. Tanks, ships, and planes can go only so far for so long without refueling. Huge fuel envoys traverse the globe to keep U.S. armed forces fueled up, but that puts American lives at risk. Technologies to break that tether, including solar panels and wind turbines. It's a little different than the Navy switching from sail power to coal-fired steamships in the early 19th century or switching to oil in the 20th century. There have been setbacks in trying to break the fuel tether. Fleet launched under former Secretary of the Navy Ray Mabus used a 50% biofuel blend fuel that cost $27 per gallon on its maiden voyage in 2012. That's 8 times more expensive than conventional petroleum. Even the green fleets scaled back 5% palm oil fuel used for its 2016 Mediterranean voyage cost $13.46 compared to the $1.60 per gallon price of conventional fuel. Whether it's an altered landscape or reliance on energy that sources back to volatile regions, the military by nature is a risk-averse organization. Now leads, or try this again, Mattis, who now heads it up, needs to hedge against perceived risk, whether they be from mankind or from nature. It's off of BizPack, and it says, desperate libs falling for elaborate anti-Trump hoaxes pay thousands for fake documents. A liberal activist is desperate to take down President Donald Trump paid thousands of dollars for what turned out to be forged documents. Among Trump's critics to believe almost anything that might hurt his presidency. He flew to Rome in January to meet with an Italian businessman who promised him a set of potentially explosive documents on Trump in exchange for $9,000 in cash. BuzzFeed News. The documents appeared to prove ExxonMobil had secretly bribed the president to nominate Rex Tillerson as his Secretary of State, passed them on to Democrat operatives and journalists, but they turned out to be forgeries. A look inside a growing market for information, and is just one example of the lengths Trump's opponents will go in hopes of toppling his presidency, and gives a glimpse inside the growing market for potentially damaging information on him. Taken note. BuzzFeed reports, and are whipping up elaborate schemes to tempt activists with fake information for a price. Regarding the ExxonMobil bribe involved a network of people, including the Italian businessman who claims to be a knight, an American felon who spends time digging up dirt on Trump, who fell for the scam. Such forged documents also feed the hunger of growing audience on the left that seems willing to believe virtually any claim about Trump's supposed bad deeds, BuzzFeed reports. Editor-in-chief Ben Smith to watch out in a companion piece. Of us covering the story and the stew of real information, fantasy, and now forgery around it need to continue to report and think clearly about what we know and what we don't, and to resist the sugar high that comes with telling people exactly what they want to hear. The article is off of BuzzFeed. Oh, I'm sorry, it's off BizPack. Off BizPack, and it says, Rand Paul roasts Washington, entrenched John McCain with ultimate political insult. Senator Rand Paul said essentially that is a poster child for term limits. Yes, he went there. While a guest on MSNBC's Morning Joe, the Kentucky Republican was asked to respond to Senator John McCain's wild accusation on the Senate floor that Paul is working in cahoots with Russian President Vladimir Putin. And it says, I think he makes a really, really strong case, Paul told host Willie Geist of the Arizona Republican, for term limits. His thought, I think maybe he's past his prime, Paul said of his octogenarian colleague. Maybe he's gotten a little unhinged. Support on social media. And here comes the tweets. Then it ends up saying McCain's comments about Paul came after Paul objected to McCain's call for unanimous consent on a vote for a treaty to allow the tiny nation of Montenegro to join NATO. Oh, I'm liking that Paul better all the time. The next one we have here is off of BizPack. Yes. Agencies overwhelmed as Somalis flee U.S. and head for the northern border. Somalis are doing what Hollywood elite promised they do, but didn't. Immigrants from Somalia who sought sanctuary in the United States are now making illegal border crossings into Canada, apparently to escape the clutches of new sheriff occupying the White House. More than 2,000 people made the journey during the first of 2017. Approximate 5,000-mile, largely insecure U.S.-Canadian border, ABC News reported. Somalia was among 6 countries subject to temporary ban by President Donald Trump's revised executive order, the implementation of which was halted Wednesday by a Hawaiian federal judge. Administration firmly in place. They traveled on foot by way of modern, informal version of the Underground Railroad out of a relentless concern that they may be sent back to Somalia. Rules that will capture them to take them to Somalia, said Mohammed Mahood. Minneapolis is the first stop for many on this railroad route. But why Canada? Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced early this year in response to Trump's temporary travel ban that his country will welcome them, proclaiming that diversity is our strength. Who made the trek northward from Minneapolis described the journey as very cold and dangerous. Some of us, they get blood in their legs because they are walking 8 hours or 9 hours, he said. A few wondered what exactly it was they feared. And there's some tweets. And it says the Somalia American neighborhood in Minneapolis, known as Little Mogadishu, has become a breeding ground for terrorist activities. Late last year, 3 Somali Americans for conspiring to provide material support to a foreign terrorist organization. ABC noted the generous people of Canada, but couldn't ignore the immigrants or refugees would have on the country. I'm at an age where I'm close to retirement, said Tom Parr. When they come here and apply for refugee status, I do as a Canadian who has contributed to this country for 40 years. While taxpayers may be asked to take more of a burden, Canadian welfare agencies are being overwhelmed, ABC reported. One center employee told ABC they opened 140 files in the first 2 months of this year when they usually handle 50 to 60 cases a year. Americans welcomed the news that Somalis were packing their bags and heading out. Just tweets waving goodbye, if you want to take a look at them. Says still others realize that they can waltz their way north. Terrorists could dance the same waltz south, a northern wall also. And there is a news report in this video if you want to pull it up to see that. I have in this episode of the Weekly Standard, it says the CBO didn't say anything about 24 million insurance. In the hour it was reported with smothering ubiquity that the GOP's Obamacare replacement would cause 24 million individuals to lose insurance. The government health care policy was given a bucket of buffalo wings, a wet nap, and a day off. Sloppy and awfully lazy. 24 million people losing insurance is roughly equivalent to the population of 15 particular states, Rachel Maddow tweeted. not one of them with more than 5 electoral votes, but vertically appeared ominous. Almost 50,000 users have hit the retweet button. 50,000 users who have participated in the week's biggest question begging exercise. In the Congressional Budget Office's projections about the American Health Care Act, did the agency say the bill would cause 24 million to lose coverage, cancel it, or take it from them. The report rather estimated that the total number of individuals insured under the Republican plan would eventually be 24 million fewer than the total insured under the Obamacare. And why is that? That it's because some consumers would choose not to buy insurance if they're not penalized for lacking it. CBO and the Joint Committee on Taxation estimates that in 2018, 14 million more people would be uninsured under the legislation than under the current law. Most of that increase would stem from appealing the penalties associated with the individual mandate, the report reads. Some of those people would choose not to have insurance because they covered by insurance under current law only to avoid paying the penalties. And some people would forego insurance in response to higher premiums. The Republican legislation would also make several changes to Medicaid, including its funding mechanism and the Affordable Care Act's expansion of the program. The reintroduction in insurance coverage between 2018 and 2026 would stem in large part from changes in Medicaid enrollment because some states, their expansion of eligibility, some states that needed eligibility in the future would choose not to do so, and per enrollee spending in the program would be capped, the CBO explains. In 2026, an estimated 52 million people would be uninsured, compared with 28 million who would lack insurance that year under the current law. The difference between 52 million and 28 million is 24 million. Thus, the number that has been reported in the media and weaponized by the Democrats. Two takeaways from these two batches of yearly numbers. Individual does not lose insurance like it was robbed or fell out of the coat pocket, that voluntarily choose to forego it. Such behavior is more likely when it doesn't carry a fine. Some people might not want to spend their money on coverage, be priced out of purchasing it. The basis for many conservative critiques of the proposal, the scope of this writing, to those who are potential Medicaid enrollees cannot possibly lose Medicaid if they don't have it in the first place. Say that such individuals are being deprived of the GOP's action, but that's for a separate policy discussion. Republicans have their own ideas for how to provide poor Americans access to affordable health care. In parentheses, see the passage on Medicaid and the AHCA from Abic Roy's Mercilessly Analysis, and you can click on that link to take you to that. It says, lose does not have an appropriate synonym to convey the document projects for future health coverage. The agency's forecast includes people who have varying motivations for being insured, as well as hypothetical consumers. And this stops short of the Budget Office difficulty asking insurance ownership, a statistic based on human decision making and thus substantial uncertainty. This is worth considering when the House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi says that the proposal pushes 24 million people out of health care, off of health coverage, or when Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says the CBO, of course, made clear that 24 million Americans will lose their health insurance if Trump care becomes the law of the land. The CBO stated no such thing. Quickly, little of what it says comes off as clear. Let the hamster catch up here. Well, that is the end of that article, and that's all I have in this episode, but there's more episodes to follow. I've got lots more news for you. If you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up, share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done that. Informed. See you in the next one.